Fantasy anime that are based on light novels tend to be generic and repetitive, sharing a lot of the same tropes and problems. But one anime, while still being similar, manages to separate itself from the rest and stand above. A Certain Magical Index is a light novel and anime written by Kazuma Kamachi. The most notable difference between most fantasy light novels and Index is the protagonist. Light novels tend to be the anime that have generic, self-insert protagonists. Index, on the other hand, has a character with his own personality. Toma Kamijo, the protagonist, still shows typical protagonist traits but also shows some unique ones. His extremely strong moral compass and righteousness may be generic in concept, but in execution, it makes him feel like an actual human. Other small things like his tendency to complain, his mischievous side, and his open perverted nature help to separate him from a self-insert protagonist. These are just some things that make him different. Another thing that makes Index's protagonist unique is the way it uses overpowered characters. A lot of light novels have an unreasonably overpowered character who can basically never lose. In Index, Toma has a very specific ability that only makes him overpowered in certain situations. Those situations just happen to be what he's put into 90% of the time. His ability to dispel anything supernatural with his right hand is so specific that the audience is never left questioning why he won a battle. Not only that, but it has a weakness. The power being stuck in his right hand, only being activated through physical contact, and only having effect on supernatural things leaves many openings for his opponents. In fact, Toma lost his second fight in the very first arc because of one of these weaknesses. Toma being overpowered in specific situations makes him a less overpowered character, separating itself more from fantasy light novels. Another character-related thing that makes Index better is its gender balance and harem control. Light novel fantasies tend to have one male and a plethora of females, leading to a harem. Gender balance is nice to see because it makes more sense, and harems are annoying and unrealistic. It is very unlikely that every girl a man meets wants to stick around them. This is of course done because of the self-insert, but since Index's protagonist isn't a self-insert, it does other things with this. Index not only balances out the males and females, but also finds a way to lessen the impact of the harem. Unlike many light novels, not every female in Index likes Toma. While there may be a few girls who like him, Toma is never seen around all of them at one time. At most, he is around 2 or 3 girls at a time. Index's power system isn't necessarily something that puts it above specifically light novel fantasies. It's more so just good writing. Index's power system is one of the most creative in anime as a whole. It has an Esper side and a magician side. The Espers use abilities that involve complex science and theories, while the magician side uses a plethora of real-world religious and magical concepts to cast spells. Both of these power systems are extremely nuanced and must have taken an extensive amount of research to come up with. When looking into the Esper side, one can find complex calculations, interesting theoretical situations, and real science. When looking into the magical side, one can find traces of religious ideas engraved into the powers and its setup, references to real-world religion and magic beliefs, and more. The amount of detail put into not one, but 2 separate power systems in one story is amazing. The next reason is more directed towards magical school anime. Many fantasy anime that have a high school have a magical high school. Index is kind of the opposite. While the city Toma lives in promotes Esper powers, the school that he goes to has nearly nothing to do with powers. Toma is considered powerless and goes to a school with people who also don't show any powers. His high school is almost completely ordinary. The next point relating to the magical school is the importance it plays in the story. Toma's school has next to no importance in Index. While the argument that this is because his school isn't about powers could be made, Misaka from the spin-off Railgun goes to a school that does focus on powers, yet her school plays almost as much as a role as Toma's school. The story and most supernatural occurrences instead happens around the city. Index is more focused on the supernatural city rather than one supernatural school. The next reason is that Index's characters aren't just archetypes. In many fantasy light novels, it's as if the author goes through a checklist of anime archetypes while creating their characters. Kamachi, on the other hand, creates his own unique characters. Though some characters may have archetype traits like Mikoto Misaka being the tsundere, the trait is never their defining one. As seen in both Index and Railgun, Misaka is a nuanced and complex character that occasionally becomes a tsundere around a specific character. And continuing with characters, Index has a great cast of them. In most fantasies, it seems that the only characters that get screen time are the protagonist and his harem. A great example of this is in SAO. Klein seemed like an interesting character that could have amounted to much more, but since he wasn't the protagonist or part of the harem, he got pushed to the back. This happens in a lot more anime, but SAO was the clearest example. In Index, many characters get screen time and development. Tsuchimakato is a character with a lovable personality, but since he's one of Toma's classmates, it seems like he's unimportant. Later, Tsuchimakato is revealed to be very important and a major character in quite a few arcs. Accelerator is an interesting villain of his respective arc, but once he's defeated, it is expected that he won't show up again. Instead, he gets his own arcs and has his own story that is independent from Toma's to the point where he's considered a protagonist. This happens many more times and is always satisfying to see. This also opens up the possibilities of favorite characters instead of restricting it to the protagonist and his harem. The final thing that allows Index to stand above the rest is its villains. Many of the villains, if not all, are unique because of their reason for doing what they do. Some villains have something tragic happen to them in the past and they look at said event in a selfish or illogical perspective. This then causes them to go down the wrong path and seek revenge that they try to justify. Some are just insane or greedy. Some use religion or science to justify the actions they take. The villains in Index have unique motives that make them fleshed out and more human-like compared to other fantasy villains. All of these things come together to make a refreshing fantasy light novel that might be mistaken for simply a well-written manga adaptation or anime, making it stand above other fantasy light novel anime. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more content.